Video. I'm Tizzer MMA, and today we'll be doing a video on who is the best grappler in the UFC. So obviously S tier are the best grapplers, and down to F tier who they're not the worst grapplers in the UFC. They're just in comparison to the rest of the list. I think they're worse than the rest. So obviously we'll be going from best to worst. And in terms of grappling, obviously I know grappling and wrestling are different, but for the sake of this video, we're going to be grouping them together because obviously some people would just be S tier because they're really, really good wrestlers, so to speak. Like a lot of the Americans are really good wrestlers, and then there's a lot of guys who are more jiu-jitsu orientated who would be in the F tier, and I think that's unfair. So we're going to do a mix. So I'm going to consider both grappling, wrestling, jiu-jitsu in this list. So all three, and we're just going to be calling it grappling today. So without further ado and with that explained, we'll jump right into the list. So let's start with our first fighter. We have Colby Covington, who I'm going to put in B tier. So Colby, he's a really good wrestler. He can get takedowns. He's a good pressure wrestler. He's got that American background. And he's good at getting takedowns, but here's my problem with Colby. His top pressure, when Colby's on top and he's taking an opponent down, they're in trouble, but in comparison to a lot of other high-level fighters, they're not in a lot of trouble. And I mean that by, he doesn't really, unlike like other fighters like Khabib, he wasn't doing relentless ground and pound, and also he doesn't really look for finishes. Like, for example, he has literally no submission threat. He never really uses submissions. He has multiple times to submit people in a lot of his fights. He doesn't really care about taking the back, I've noticed. He's quite happy just to sit on top of them and grind out decision wins. I mean, that's not everyone's style of fighting, but it's certainly his. So that's why he's maybe limits him from being an A or an S tier person. He's not extremely dangerous in comparison to some of the other people that will be on this list in terms of being on the ground with him. But he can get takedowns. He's very successful. He kind of took down Kamaru Usman, who at that point had an 100% takedown record. I know they didn't count it, but I'd say it was a takedown. And he's got good takedown defense. And yeah, that's about it from him. But obviously the limiting factors that limit him from being in the A tier or the S tier is that he can't pose as much threat as other people on this list. He doesn't really go for submissions. And I know he has finished people on the ground with ground and pound, but in comparison, it's less relentless and it's less punishing, which is why he's in B tier. Moving on, we have Aljamain Sterling. Now I'm gonna put Aljamain in A tier, and we're gonna put him here for now, but we might move him later to the side, because obviously the closer left you are, the closer I think you are to being the tier above. But yeah, Aljamain's going in A. Obviously he can really get takedowns, but and he can get finishes on the ground. He's kind of the human backpack of the bantamweight division. But his biggest issue is a lot of fighters he goes against can get back to their feet. Obviously, we've seen it and his effectiveness is very limited against people who have a much better ground game. For example, against Peter Yan, I know he took the back. He couldn't submit Peter Yan. He really struggled. So he was just winning points. But what separates him from Colby is that he goes for those dangerous positions and he can finish from them. He finished TJ Dillashaw with strikes to the, basically he had him in full mount and TJ flipped over, so he could just get unlimited ground and pound. And that's stuff that Colby hasn't added to his game, which is why he's higher. He's got good submission threats. He's relentless in the takedowns. However, his takedowns are kind of low quality in comparison to other fighters, which is why he will not be in the S tier. And then, which is why he isn't even going to be in the top of the A tier by the time this list is done. So yeah, that's why he's there. Moving on, we have Khamzat Chimaev. And Khamzat Chimaev, I'm going to swap him and Aljamain Sterling now. I think Khamzat Chimaev is a better grappler than Aljamain Sterling. He's got amazing takedowns. He's very dangerous on the ground. He's strong. As far as we've seen, he's relentless. And the only thing that he needs to do to get S tier is just prove himself more. He needs to fight more. Obviously, he hasn't fought in ages, about a year now. And obviously, his potential's there. And yeah, this guy's wrestling is really, really good. He could be, the next best thing. We just haven't seen enough of it to put him in S tier yet. The only thing also against Gilbert Burns, he wasn't, after he took him to the ground in the first round, he kind of got disinterested because Gilbert Burns was threatening arm bars, threatening triangles and stuff like that. And he admitted himself after the fight, he said he wasn't that interested in the ground game and he preferred to strike with him. So, maybe there's some flaws in his game there. Maybe this guy's scared of people are really good off their backs, jiu-jitsu aces, but for now, he's staying in A tier, and if he proves himself with some good submissions or some good ground and pound finishes, he will be in the S tier very, very soon. Moving on, we have Jan Blachowicz. I'm going to put Jan Blachowicz in D tier. So the reason he's on this list is because he grappled Israel Adesanya to win that fight, and the reason that's impressive and why he's not in F tier and instead of D, which is a good place to be considering his main thing is striking, not wrestling, is that a lot of people struggle to hold Israel Adesanya down. He's a tricky guy to take down, but I think the bigger size and the strength of Jan, and obviously the fact that it would have caught Adesanya off guard, I think that really helped. And his ability to control the fight, slow it down to his pace, and just grind out the decision win is why he's earned himself a spot in the D category. However, he could have been higher, but his takedown defense as of recently has been somewhat lacking, obviously, and Clive really took advantage of that in their fight, and Glover Teixeira tapped him out in the second round, so that's kind of stopping him from moving up the ranks. His takedown defense recently has kind of really imploded, to be honest, because it used to be pretty good and pretty impressive in itself. Moving on to our first F tier grappler, we've got Darren Till. Darren Till is a really bad grappler. That shouldn't surprise anyone that he's here. I'm honestly not really going to say much else about him except he's F tier at grappling in every single department. Just watch his last few fights. Moving on, we've got Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall is going in D tier. Obviously, he's got a huge submission threat, but his method of trying to get takedowns is not actually taking them down. It's letting them take him down and then him pulling guard. So he pulls guard, and that's impractical, and in the UFC it hardly works, especially against good competitors. Obviously he learned that the hard way against Ilia Topuria. Jiu-jitsu pulling guard rarely works in the UFC, and when it does work, it's often against terrible people who have no ground game whatsoever. Anyone with common sense and a bit of grappling knowledge can usually get out of it, so that's why it's impractical. And maybe if he took his opponents down, he could be higher up this list. If he went himself, got top mount, he could make more dangerous submission attempts and stuff like that. But for now, when he's getting knocked out by pulling guard, he's staying in D tier. Moving on, we've got Brandon Moreno. Brandon's going in B tier. Obviously, he's got submissions. He's got good threats. He's got really good scrambles. That's why he's in B tier. He's got good scrambles. He can get out of bad situations. He's got submission wins. The only thing I think might be a downfall to him is that he does sometimes give up his back against people he knows who aren't going to take it. I have noticed that in some of his fights, and that's why he's here. And his grappling isn't amazing. He's a good wrestler. He's just a good all rounder. He's B tier in everything, in every department, in wrestling, in grappling, in jiu-jitsu, which is why he's here. I think he'll stay that way, to be honest. But I think there are some people who are, especially some jiu-jitsu specialists in that division, who could maybe look to take advantage of some things that he does on the ground when he scrambles. But for now, he remains in B tier. Moving on, we have got... Oh, this picture is a bit too big. We'll move it a bit. We've got Stipe Miocic, and I'm going to put him in C tier, okay? And I know you guys are going to say, whoa, this guy's one of the heavyweight goats. Well, yeah, but the guys he was wrestling were terrible at wrestling, okay? So let's look at who he's wrestled. So obviously one of the most notable performances when he beat Francis Ngannou in their first fight. But let's be honest, Francis Ngannou had no idea what to do on the ground, and he was gassed. So he had no idea what to do, and Stipe knew how to wrestle, so he wins, okay? So that's heavyweight. A lot of them are terrible at grappling. So when someone who's moderately decent at grappling grapples them, he wins most of the time. And, he could maybe have even been lower, but he did good. Obviously, he's beat Daniel Cormier, who's a proven wrestler at light heavyweight, who I think have much better skill ratios, which is why he stays here. He's got ground and pound finishes and stuff like that, so he stays here. But obviously, the fact that he's in heavyweight, a lot of the people he's been using his wrestling on aren't actually good wrestlers, so he can't really prove himself to the degree that others on this list can. For example, Aljamain Sterling, who was wrestling really skilled bantamweights like Peter Yan, and obviously getting submission wins over people like Corey Sandhagen. So that's why he's there. Some of you guys aren't going to like that, but it's the truth, sorry. Moving on, we've got Gilbert Burns. I'm going to put Gilbert in B tier. This guy's grappling is really underrated. He's really good. His ground game's underrated. I know he had a bit of a dry spell where he didn't really get submission wins, but obviously he recently got a win over Neil Magny. And yeah, he can mix things up. Well, he did pretty good against Chimaev on the ground. I know he got taken down, but he didn't get dominated, considering Chimaev literally dominates every other opponent. So that was really good at raising his stock. He kind of struggled against Usman. He looked strong early on, but he struggled, and then Usman kind of took over. So there are holes in his game, which made me realise that he's in fact maybe a C-tier grappler. But yeah, his jiu-jitsu threat's underrated, but in some of the wrestling exchanges, he just falls a little bit short against the extremely, the top 5, the top 3 guys in the welterweight division. Moving on, we have Merab Dvalishvili. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, I know I did. And we're going to put him in B tier. And the reason he's here is because I know he doesn't do a lot on the ground, but his takedowns are amazing. He can always get them, and they are relentless. This guy's a cardio god. I mean, I don't know how he's got that cardio, but this guy's cardio is insane. So his pressure is the best I've ever seen in the UFC, without a doubt. He has more pressure than Kobe. He has more pressure than Sterling. And I think he could give Sterling a good run for his money, but obviously that matchup will never happen due to them being friends. But very underrated. People hate him, so they just discount that he's a really good wrestler, but he is. And he can probably decision win everyone. To improve his game, to get up to them A tier, them S tier rankings, he just needs to actually become a threat off the grappling, because a lot of these guys can just stand back up easily. He needs to learn, submissions, really threaten them and ground and pound, because his cardio can sustain that, and obviously he should look to do that because it just make him even more complete of a fighter. Moving on, we have Islam Makhachev. He's going straight in S tier. Islam is the best wrestler in the UFC, okay? This guy's insane. Obviously, I think he's better at Khabib than wrestling. He has good takedowns, and he can find finishes, which what sets him apart from a lot of these other guys. And also his takedowns are very effective. He gets most of his takedowns, and he's got really good grip strength. He's got good squeeze. He's very, very dangerous on the ground. A very, very good submission artist. And I would say, he needs to improve his ground and pound, but the reason he doesn't is because he's so confident he can get submission finishes. He hardly ever does it. So, obviously Islam Makhachev, complete S-tier fighter, and I'm sure he'll go far. Grappling all the other lightweights, he's very, very talented, and he's at the top of the list for a reason. Moving on, we have Khabib. Khabib Nurmagomedov is another S tier. I do not think his grappling's as good as Makhachev's. I think Makhachev is the better grappler, and also I think he mixes up his takedowns better, and I think his clinch work is maybe also better than Khabib's. And he's also bigger than Khabib, I think, which gives him an advantage, obviously, just because of the size. And I think he's stronger than Khabib too. And Makhachev has proven it against people who I'd say maybe are better wrestlers than what Khabib faced. So Makhachev obviously beat Volkanovski, and I know that was a controversial win, but Volkanovski's really, really good defensively in wrestling. He's got really good takedowns, and his submission game is really good defensively. So to win that fight showed a lot. And Khabib, obviously, he did well against Conor. But the people that Makhachev has faced, obviously Charles Oliveira. Oliveira is really good. So for him to submit Oliveira on the ground says a lot about how good he is. And Khabib just didn't prove himself against grapplers of that credibility, which is why he's here. And I do think that in a grappling match, Makhachev would probably win. Moving on, we have Charles Oliveira, and I'm going to put him in, we're going to move Aljamain again, and I'm going to put Charles Oliveira in A tier. So this guy, his jiu-jitsu is insane. This guy, jiu-jitsu, he has probably some of the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC, if not the best. The only reason he's not higher is because his grappling somewhat lets him down against the extremely good grapplers such as Makhachev. Makhachev out-wrestled him quite well. I mean, Oliveira had his moments, but Makhachev's wrestling background really saw him through that match and gave him the advantage, which is why he's there. But, threat-wise on the ground, Oliveira is extremely dangerous. As soon as you're down on the ground with him, and this is what sets him apart from maybe some of the others, he's dangerous when he's on his back, and he's dangerous when he's on top as well. And a lot of these fighters like Ryan Hall, they don't really know what to do when they're on top compared to being on bottom. So that's why he's so high up the list. He's proven against good people. He submitted Poirier, submitted Gaethje, people that are notoriously hard to submit. Only the best people in the division have submitted them, such as Khabib, and that's why he's there. Moving on, we have Alexander Volkanovski. He's also going in A tier. Actually, we're going to move Aljamain Sterling again because I think Volk is better at grappling than him. So Volk's not as good offensively as Sterling, but defensively he's miles better, okay? Volkanovski's defensive wrestling is probably the best in the UFC. Considering he has a significant size advantage against Makhachev, he did amazingly in that match, and people have to give him credit for that. So that is why he's there, and Sterling's to the right of him. And offensively too, he's very sound. He can get takedowns. He took down Max Holloway a few times. Obviously, he just needs to work on his offensive grappling, and he could use that against Yair Rodriguez, because obviously Yair is going to be a really tough fight, very good stand-up. So he should try and improve that for his Yair fight, and maybe he could work himself to the top of A tier, or maybe, if he gets submission finishes or ground and pounds, S tier, very good fighter, one of the featherweight goats, and he could be a top 5 fighter of all time if he has a good end to his career in the next few matches. Moving on, we have John Jones, and I'm going to put John Jones here. I think it's fair, because obviously he doesn't have that relenting pressure that the guys above him in the list do, and he struggled against high-level guys. So obviously he's good at taking down the light heavyweights that weren't really light heavyweights. You're looking at Kyoto Machida. He isn't a light heavyweight, guys. He's a middleweight who couldn't be bothered to cut weight, okay? Obviously, Jones is going to be able to take him down because he was a big light heavyweight. He's strong, and he did get taken down a few times in fights. So I think he definitely got taken down by DC, and I'm pretty sure Gustafsson took him down as well. So obviously that limits him definitely. And he was good on the ground. He had a really good top ground game, good ground and pound, which is why he's there. His takedowns were decent. They weren't guaranteed, but they weren't to Aljamain Sterling's level either, where they were really sloppy. But so that's why he's there. He does stuff when he's on the ground, but against the higher level people such as Dominic Reyes, he struggled. But he had a good win against Cyril Gane. But I mean, let's be honest, guys, Cyril Gane might just be the worst grappler in the heavyweight division. We have no idea. Moving on, we have Kamaru Usman, and he's gonna go. We're gonna put him in the top of B, okay? We're going to move these guys all down a bit here. So we're going to move them there, Kobe there. So he is the better grappler than Kobe, I think. They wrestle some kind of similarly. Obviously, no submission threat from him either, but he can get the takedowns more effectively, I think. And he can hold people down really well. And I think he's just ever so slightly better than Kobe, but they're so similar in their wrestling style. But I think he's just maybe stronger than Kobe. I think that's definitely a factor. I think his timing's maybe better. He feints takedowns and stuff like that. And his clinch work up until recently was looking pretty good. So that's why he's there, B tier. Obviously his ground and pound isn't that bad when he takes people down, and a lot of them can get back to their feet, especially Leon Edwards in recent fights. So that's why he's not in A tier, and he has literally no submission threat whatsoever, and he has been submitted before in his fights. Moving on, we have Daniel Cormier. We're going to put Daniel Cormier in, I think we're going to put him in C tier as well. He's a really good wrestler. I might put him above Jones, actually. I think Daniel Cormier, he's proven against light heavyweights, and he's proven it against heavyweights too. He's lifted Stipe up, so he can wrestle Stipe. And he's just a really good wrestler. Obviously, he submitted Derek Lewis as well. So he's probably proven it more, maybe. And I think they're very even, so I can't decide who to put in front of each other. But maybe because Jones won their fight, I'll put him there, actually. But very evenly matched. Somewhat similar in their style, but DC more looks for submissions than Jones, I'd say, nowadays. And obviously DC's retired. But so he uses his weight, his size. He's very undersized, so it gives him a good center of gravity, so he can get takedowns easily and stuff like that. He's got a good double leg, and he's got good single too. So that's why he's there. But some of the guys he was beating just weren't the best at grappling, like Derek Lewis, and he didn't really prove himself against the highest level people, because to be honest, it's not his fault. There's just not a lot of them in them higher weight class divisions. So that's why he's there. Obviously, technically, compared to some of the lighter guys, not as good. Moving on, we've got Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards is going in. He's going in B tier. This guy's got a really underrated grappling game. His jiu-jitsu's underrated. His grappling's underrated. His takedown defense is underrated. Everything about Leon Edwards is just underrated. Just look at his performance against Usman. You know, he did well in the third fight, the trilogy, at stopping them takedowns. And as soon as he got taken down, he got right back up. And obviously in their first fight, he did officially break Usman's the 100% takedown defense rate. So props to him. Really underrated. He just doesn't implement it enough. But I think in his next fight, you know, whether he's fighting Kobe or not, I think he should try and take Kobe down. You know, surprise him. You know, threaten submissions. So yeah, that's what I think he should do. He did good against Nate Diaz on the ground. He out-grappled him. There was no issues there. Nate Diaz is somewhat good on the ground. So yeah, and that's the entire list, guys. So thanks for watching. Obviously, leave your comments down below. Tell me what you think of the list. Obviously, it won't be the exact same no matter what. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my future uploads, because there's going to be a lot of them. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.